Chapter 10. All that day was on my mind. I remembered her brown nakedness and her kiss, the flavor of her mouth as it came cold from the sea, and I saw myself white and virginal, pulling in the pudgy line of my stomach, standing in the sand and holding my hands over my loins. I walked up and down the room. Late in the afternoon, I was exhausted, and the sight of myself in the mirror was unbearable. I sat at the typewriter and wrote about it, poured it out the way it should have happened, hammered it out with such violence that the portable typewriter kept moving away from me and across the table. On paper, I stalked her like a tiger and beat her to the earth and overpowered her with my invincible strength. It ended with her creeping after me in the sand, tears streaming from her eyes, beseeching me to have mercy upon her. Fine, excellent. But when I read it over, it was ugly and dull. I tore the pages and threw them away. Helfrich knocked on my door. He was pale and trembling, his skin like wet paper. He was off the booze. Never would he touch another drop. He sat on the edge of my bed and wrung his tiny, bony fingers. Nostalgically, he talked of meat, of the good old steaks he got back in Kansas City, of the wonderful T-bones and tender lamb chops. But not out here in this land of the eternal sunshine, where the cattle ate nothing but dead weeds and sunshine, where the meat was full of worms and they had to paint it to make it look bloody and red. And would I lend him 50 cents? I gave him the money and he went down to the butcher shop on Olive Street. In a little while he was back in his room, and the lower floor of the hotel was fragrant with the tangy aroma of liver and onions. I walked into his room. He sat before a plate of food, his mouth bloated, his thin jaw working hard. He shook his fork at me. "I'll make it good with you, kid. I'll pay you back 1,000 times." It made me hungry. I walked down to the restaurant near Angel's Flight and ordered the same thing. I took my time having dinner. But no matter how long I loitered over coffee, I knew I would eventually walk the flight to the Columbia buffet. I had only to touch the lump on my lip to grow angry and then to feel passion. When I got down to the buffet, I was afraid to enter. I crossed the street and watched her through the windows. She was not wearing her white shoes, and she seemed the same, happy and busy with her beer tray. I got an idea. I walked quickly, 2 blocks to the telegraph office. I sat down before the telegraph blank, my heart pounding. The words writhed across the page. "I love you, Camilla. I want to marry you, Arturo Bandini." When I paid for it, the clerk looked at the address and said it would be delivered in 10 minutes. I hurried back to Spring Street and stood in the shadowed doorway, waiting for the telegraph boy to appear. The moment I saw him coming around the corner, I knew the telegraph was a blunder. I ran into the street and stopped him. I told him I wrote the telegram and didn't want it to be delivered. "A mistake," I said. He wouldn't listen. He was tall with a pimply face. I offered him $10. He shook his head and smiled emphatically. $20. 30. "Not for 10 million," he said. I walked back to the shadows and watched him deliver the telegram. She was amazed to get it. I saw her finger point at herself, her face dubious. Even after she signed for it, she stood holding it in her hand, watching the telegraph boy disappear. As she tore it open, I locked my eyes shut. When I opened them, she was reading the telegram and laughing. She walked to the bar and handed the wire to the sallow-faced bartender, the one we had driven home the night before. He read it without expression. Then he handed it to the other bartender. He too was unimpressed. I felt a deep gratitude for them. When Camilla read it again, I was grateful for that too. But when she took it to a table where a group of men sat drinking, my mouth slowly opened and I was sick. The laughter of the men floated across the street. I shuddered and walked away quickly. At 6th, I turned the corner and walked down to Main. I wandered through the crowds of seedy, hungry derelicts without destination. At 2nd, I stopped before a Filipino taxi dance hall. The literature on the walls spoke eloquently of 40 beautiful girls and the dreamy music of Lani Kula and his melodic Hawaiians. I climbed one flight of echoing stairs to a booth and bought a ticket. Inside were the 40 women, lined against the opposite wall, sleek in tight evening dresses, most of them blondes. Nobody was dancing, not a soul. On the platform, the five-piece orchestra banged out a tune with fury. A few customers like myself stood behind a short wicker fence opposite the girls. They beckoned to us. I surveyed the group, found a blonde whose gown I liked, and bought a few dance tickets. Then I waved at the blonde. She fell into my arms like an old lover, and we beat the oak for 2 dances. She talked soothingly and called me honey, but I thought only of that girl 2 streets away, of myself lying with her in the sand and making a fool of myself. It was useless. I gave the cloying blonde my handful of tickets and walked out of the hall and into the streets again. I could feel myself waiting, and when I kept looking at street clocks, I knew what was wrong with myself. I was waiting for 11 o'clock when the Columbia closed. I was there at 6:45. I was there in the parking lot walking toward her car. I sat on the burst upholstery and waited. Off in the one corner of the parking lot was a shed where the attendant kept his accounts. Over the shed was a neon clock in red. I kept my eye on the clock, watched the minute hand rush toward 11. Then I was afraid to see her again, and as I squirmed and writhed in the seat, my hand touched something soft. It was a cap of hers, a tam o' shanter. It was black with a tiny fluffy knob on the crown. I felt it with my fingers and smelled it with my nose. Its powder was like herself. It was what I wanted. I stuffed it into my pocket and walked out of the parking lot. Then I climbed the stairs of Angel's Flight to my hotel. When I got to my room, I took it out and threw it on the bed. I undressed, turned out the light, and held her hat in my arms. Another day, poetry. Write her a poem, spill your heart to her in sweet cadences. But I didn't know how to write poetry. It was love and dove with me. Bad rhymes, blundering sentiment. Oh, Christ in heaven, I'm no writer. I can't even put down a little quatrain. I'm no good in this world. I stood at the window and waved my hands at the sky. No good at all, just a cheap fake. Neither writer nor lover, neither fish nor fowl. Then what was the matter? I had breakfast and went to a little Catholic church at the edge of Bunker Hill. The rectory was in back of the frame church. I rang the bell, and a woman in a nurse's apron answered. Her hands were covered with flour and dough. I want to see the pastor, I said. The woman had a busy jaw and a hostile pair of sharp gray eyes. Father Abbott is busy, she said. What do you want? I have to see him, I said. I tell you, he's busy. The priest came to the door. He was stocky, powerful, smoking a cigar, a man in his 50s. What is it, he asked. I told him I wanted to see him alone. I had some trouble on my mind. The woman sniffed contemptuously and disappeared through a hall. The priest opened the door and led me to his study. It's a small room crammed with books and magazines. My eyes bulged. There in one corner was a huge stack of Hackmuth's magazine. I walked to it at once and pulled out the issue containing The Little Dog Laughed. The priest had seated himself. This is a great magazine, I said. The greatest of them all. The priest crossed his leg, shifted his cigar. It's rotten, he said, rotten to the core. I disagree, I said. I happen to be one of its leading contributors. You, the priest asked, and what did you contribute? I spread The Little Dog Laughed before him on the desk. He glanced at it, pushed it aside. I read that story, he said. It's a piece of hogwash. And your reference to the Blessed Sacrament was a vile and contemptible lie. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. Leaning back in his chair, he made it very plain that he didn't like me. His angry eyes centered on my forehead, his cigar rolling from one side of his mouth to the other. Now, he said, what is it you wish to see me about? I didn't sit down. He made it very clear in his own way that I wasn't to use any of the furniture in the room. It's about a girl, I said. What have you done to her? He said. Nothing, I said. But I could speak no more. He had plucked out my heart. Hogwash. All those nuances, that superb dialogue, that brilliant lyricism, and he called it hogwash. Better to close my ears and go away to some far off place where no words were spoken. Hogwash. I changed my mind, I said. I don't want to talk about it now. He stood up and walked toward the door. Very well, he said. Good day. I walked out, the hot sun blinding me. The finest short story in American literature, and this person, this priest, had called it hogwash. Maybe that business about the Blessed Sacrament wasn't exactly true. Maybe it didn't really happen. But my God, what psychological values, what prose, what sheer beauty. As soon as I got to my room, I sat down before my typewriter and planned my revenge. An article, a scathing attack upon the stupidity of the church. I pecked out the title, The Catholic Church is Doomed. I hammered it out furiously, one page after another, until there were 6. Then I paused to read it. The stuff was awful, ludicrous. I tore it up and threw myself on the bed. I still hadn't written a poem to Camilla. As I lay there, inspiration came. I wrote it from memory. I have forgot much, Camilla. Gone with the wind, flung roses, roses riotously with the throng, dancing to put thy pale, lost lilies out of mind. But I was desolate and sick with an old passion. Yes, all the time, because the dance was long. I have been faithful to thee, Camilla, in my fashion. Arturo Bandini. I sent it by telegraph, proud of it. Watched the telegraph clerk read it. Beautiful poem, my poem to Camilla. A bit of immortality from Arturo to Camilla. And I paid the telegraph man and walked down to my place in the dark doorway, and there I waited. The same boy floated by on his bicycle. I watched him deliver it. Watched Camilla read it in the middle of the floor. Watched her shrug and rip it to pieces. Saw the pieces floating to the sawdust on the floor. Shook my head and walked away. Even the poetry of Ernest Dawson had no effect upon her. Not even Dawson. Ah, well, the hell with you, Camilla. I can forget you. I have money. These streets are full of things you can't give me. So down to Main Street and to Fifth Street, to the long dark bars, to the King Edward's cellar, and there was a girl with yellow hair and sickness in her smile. Her name was Jean. She was thin and tubercular, but she was hard too. So anxious to get my money. Her languid mouth for my lips. Her long fingers at my trousers, her sickly, lovely eyes watching every dollar. So your name is Jean, I said. Well, 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 pretty name. We'll dance, Jean. We'll swing around, and you don't know it, you beauty in a blue gown, but you're dancing with a freak, an outcast from the world of man, neither fish fowl nor good red herring. And we drank and we danced and we drank again. Good fellow, Bandini, so Jean called the boss. This is Mr. Bandini. This is Mr. Schwartz. Very good. Shake hands. Nice place you got, Schwartz. Nice girls. 1 drink, 2 drink, 3 drinks. What's that you're drinking, Jean? I tasted it. That brownish stuff looked like whiskey. Must have been whiskey. Such a face she made, her sweet face so contorted. But it wasn't whiskey, it was tea. Plain tea. 40 cents a slug. Jean, a little liar, trying to fool a great author. Don't fool me, Jean, not Bandini. Lover of man and beast alike. So take this, $5, put it away. Don't drink, Jean, just sit there, only sit there and let my eyes search your face because your hair is blonde and not dark. You are not like her. You are sick and you are from down there in Texas and you have a crippled mother to support and you don't make very much money, only 20 cents a drink. You've only made $10 from Arturo Bandini tonight, you poor little girl. Poor little starving girl with the sweet eyes of a baby and the soul of a thief. Go to your sailor boys, honey. They don't have the $10, but they've got what I haven't got. Me, Bandini, neither fish fowl nor good red herring. Good night, Jean, good night. And here was another place and another girl. Oh, how lonely she was. From away back in Minnesota. A good family, too. Sure, honey. Tell my tired eyes about your good family. They owned a lot of property and then the Depression came. Well, how sad, how tragic. And now you work down here in a Fifth Street dive and your name is Evelyn. Poor Evelyn. And the folks are out here too, and you have the cutest sister, not like the tramps you meet down here, a swell girl. And he asked me if I want to meet your sister. Why not? She got her sister, innocent little Evelyn, went across the room and dragged her poor little sister Vivian away from those lousy sailors and brought her to our table. Hello, Vivian, this is Arturo. Hello, Arturo, this is Vivian. But what happened to your mouth, Vivian? Who dug it out with a knife? And what happened to your bloodshot eyes and your sweet breath smelling like a sewer? Poor kids all the way from glorious Minnesota. Oh no, they're not Swedish. Where did I get that idea? Their last name was Mortensen, but it wasn't Swedish. Why, their family name had been Americans for generations. To be sure, just a couple of homegirls. Do you know something? Evelyn talking. Poor little Vivian had worked down here for almost 6 months and not once had any of these bastards ever ordered her a bottle of champagne. And I there, Bandini, I looked like such a swell guy. And wasn't Vivian cute? And wasn't it a shame she's so innocent? And would I buy her a bottle of champagne? Dear little Vivian, all the way from the clean fields of Minnesota, and not a Swede either. And almost a virgin, too. Just a few men short of being a virgin. Who could resist this tribute? So bring on the champagne, cheap champagne, just a pint size. We can all drink it. Only $8 a bottle, and gee, wasn't wine cheap out here? Why, back in Duluth, the champagne was $12 a bottle. Ah, Evelyn and Vivian, I love you both. I love you for your sad lives, the empty misery of your coming home at dawn. You too are alone, but you are not like Arturo Bandini, who is neither fish, fowl, nor good red herring. So have your champagne because I love you both, and you too, Vivian. Even if your mouth looks like it had been dug out with raw fingernails, and your old child's eyes swim in blood written like mad sonnets.